Hey everyone, welcome back to Motivation Library.
It's great to be here.
Today we're diving deep into Night, the incredibly powerful memoir by Elie Wiesel.
A book that has stayed with me long after reading it.
Yeah, it really has with me as well.
It's a tough but important read.
For those unfamiliar, Night takes us back to the 1940s.
To a town called Sait,
Right, Sait in Transylvania.
where Eliezer, a devout Jewish teenager, has his world turned upside down.
By the Nazi regime.
It's a story that forces us to confront the darkest chapters of human history.
You know, when we were preparing for this deep dive.
The notes about the journey to Auschwitz were just chillin'.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The way Wiesel doesn't just tell us it was horrible,
Right.
but he uses these sensory details.
The stench, the overcrowding.
Is deafening silence.
It creates this palpable sense of dread.
Oh, absolutely. And claustrophobia.
It's not just a physical journey,
Right.
but a descent into a psychological hell.
It really is.
And it's important to remember that the Holocaust, it wasn't some spontaneous eruption of violence,
Yeah.
the final solution.
Right.
This wasn't an overnight event.
Oh, definitely not.
It was a carefully planned and executed campaign
Right.
rooted in Nazi ideology.
Which was?
They dehumanized the Jewish people,
Okay.
viewing them as a threat to their vision of a master race.
So that dehumanization was a gradual process.
It was a
Wasn't it?
slow and insidious process.
In the beginning,
Yeah.
the people of Sait,
Mm-hmm.
they couldn't grasp the reality of what was happening.
It's unimaginable.
What stood out to you in the passages where they deny the truth?
Even when the evidence is right in front of them.
It's like their minds are trying to protect them
I think so.
from the sheer terror of it all.
It's hard to fathom such evil.
Especially when you've lived a life of peace and faith like Eliezer.
Right.
Remember Madame Schechter,
Oh, yes.
the woman on the train
Yes.
who has visions of a terrible fire?
Chilling.
It's like this crack in the surface of their denial.
Right.
A glimpse into the horrifying truth.
That awaits them.
That awaits them, yeah.
And as the story progresses,
Yeah,
that denial shatters.
it does.
We see Eliezer grappling with not only the physical horrors,
Of the camp.
but also a profound spiritual crisis.
This brings up the age-old question of theodicy,
It does.
the questioning of God's goodness
Right.
in the face of evil.
Eliezer's words are raw,
Yeah.
agonizing.
Yeah.
At one point, he even declares that God is hanging here on this gallows.
I mean, that line is so powerful.
So powerful.
Because it captures the utter despair
And abandonment.
that he feels.
The contrast between the peaceful, traditional life in sight before the war
Right.
and the brutal reality of the camps is just devastating.
It is. And you know what? This
Mm.
contrast is deliberate.
Wiesel wants us to understand the magnitude of what was lost,
Yeah,
the utter destruction of innocence and faith.
absolutely.
Night isn't just a story about suffering, though.
What else is it about?
It's also about relationships,
Okay.
especially the bond between Eliezer and his father.
Right. The son is forced to become the protector.
This moment highlights a key theme,
Which is?
the enduring power of love.
No,
Even amidst the horrors of Auschwitz,
Yeah.
the father-son bond becomes a source of strength and motivation.
Have you ever experienced a similar bond in your own life
Absolutely.
where connection helped you through a difficult time?
I think we all have in some way.
Yeah.
It's in these relationships, these moments of human connection, that we see flickers of light in the overwhelming darkness.
Speaking of light and darkness,
Yeah.
Wiesel's use of imagery and symbolism throughout the book
Oh, it's masterful.
is masterful. Yeah, the recurring motif of night, for example.
Represents more than just the absence of light.
It symbolizes the loss of hope, the shattering of faith,
The descent into a world of unimaginable cruelty.
and then there's the music.
Oh, yes.
The scene with Julia playing his violin in the barracks.
Devastatingly beautiful.
Moments before his death is just,
It's heartbreaking,
it's heartbreaking, yeah.
but it speaks to the power of art.
To transcend even the most horrific circumstances,
It's a reminder that beauty and hope can exist.
even in the face of unimaginable suffering.
Even something as simple as food
Right.
takes on a horrifying new meaning in the camps.
Food becomes an obsession,
It's
a symbol of survival.
a source of
But
conflict.
descriptions of hunger
The desperate longing for a crust of bread,
or a bowl of soup highlight the prisoner's constant struggle.
for basic sustenance,
You get a real sense of how dehumanizing it was.
reducing people to their most primal instincts.
But even then,
Even then,
amidst that primal need,
we see acts of selflessness,
prisoners sharing their meager rations.
risking their own survival to help someone else.
It's a testament to the resilience
Of the human spirit.
of the human spirit, the capacity for compassion.
Even in the most dire of circumstances.
Before we get too deep into those acts of resilience, though, we need to talk about something important.
Okay.
If you're finding this deep dive into Night thought-provoking,
Please consider subscribing to Motivation Library.
and liking this video.
It really helps us create more content like this.
So now,
Back to Night.
I know this is heavy stuff,
It is.
but Night ultimately raises a profound question. What does it take to survive not just physically, but spiritually, in the face of such evil?
It's a question that goes beyond the Holocaust.
It challenges us to examine our own capacity for resilience.
Our own responses to suffering and injustice.
Night doesn't offer easy answers.
But it does provide a glimpse into the human capacity for endurance.
The strength that can be found even in the darkest of places.
And it reminds us of the importance of bearing witness,
Of sharing stories of suffering.
so that they are never forgotten.
Stories like Elieser's can inspire us to fight against hatred and intolerance.
In our own time.
In our own time, they can teach us the importance of empathy
Compassion.
and the courage to speak out against injustice.
Because as Elie Wiesel himself said,
To remain silent and indifferent is the greatest sin of all.
powerful words.
And that idea of silence
Yes.
is something we see throughout the book.
It's a powerful force,
It's not just about the absence of sound
representing the world's indifference.
to the suffering of the Jewish people.
You're right.
It's a silence born out of fear, apathy,
And even complicity.
even complicity in Wiesel forces us to confront that silence.
To ask ourselves how we would respond in the face of such evil.
Would we have the courage to speak out, to act, to resist?
Or would we remain silent?
Those are tough questions, and ones that each of us needs to wrestle with.
Before we get too deep into that discussion, though,
Yeah.
let's take a closer look at the impact of the camps on the prisoners.
One of the things that makes Night so impactful,
Is its exploration of the complexities of human nature
we see the absolute worst of humanity,
in the actions of the Nazis.
but we also witness extraordinary acts of courage
Compassion and resilience.
among the prisoners.
It's this constant tension
This push and pull
between the darkness and the light.
that makes the book so gripping.
It forces you to confront some really tough questions.
About your own values.
Your own beliefs.
Absolutely. Night doesn't shy away from the difficult questions about faith
Morality.
and the nature of good and evil.
It compels you to examine your own understanding of those concepts.
And it makes you think about how you would react.
In such extreme circumstances.
Would you have the strength to endure?
Would you be able to hold on to your humanity?
Those are questions that each reader has to grapple with on their own.
Night provides a framework for those reflections.
It forces us to confront the darkest aspects of human nature.
While also highlighting the enduring power of the human spirit.
I'm curious, what are some of the key takeaways that you think listeners should walk away with after experiencing this deep dive into Night?
Well, first and foremost,
Yeah.
I think it's crucial to remember that Night is not just a story about the Holocaust. It's a story about the human condition. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of hatred, intolerance, and indifference.
And a reminder that these dangers are not confined to the past.
They exist in our world today
Right
in
here.
different forms, in different places.
Precisely. So one takeaway
Yeah.
is the importance of vigilance
Of actively combating hatred and prejudice.
whenever and wherever we encounter it.
We can't just stand by and let history repeat itself.
We have a responsibility to learn from the past.
And to work towards a more just and compassionate future.
Another key takeaway is the power of empathy.
Night invites us to step into Elieser's shoes.
To try to understand the depth of his suffering.
To connect with his humanity.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the face of unimaginable horror,
We can choose empathy over indifference.
we can choose to connect with the humanity of others.
Even those who are different from us.
And that connection
That empathy,
can be a source of strength.
both for ourselves and for others.
It can help us to build bridges of understanding.
And to work towards a more just and equitable world.
So, in a way,
Yeah.
Night is both a warning and a call to action.
It warns us about the dangers of hatred and indifference.
But it also calls us to act with compassion, empathy, and courage.
It reminds us that even in the darkest of times,
The human spirit can endure,
and that even small acts of kindness can make a difference.
and it challenges us to use our voices
Our actions
and our choices.
to create a world where such atrocities can never happen again.
Because, as Elie Wiesel said,
To forget the dead would be akin to killing them a second time.
powerful words. And they underscore the importance of remembering
of bearing witness,
of sharing stories of suffering.
so that they are never forgotten.
Because, as Wiesel also said,
there may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice, but there must never be a time when we fail to protest.
So let's talk about protest for a moment.
Okay.
How can we take the lessons of Night and translate them into meaningful action in our own lives?
I think it starts with education.
Okay.
We need to learn about the Holocaust, not just as a historical event, but as a human tragedy with enduring relevance.
So we need to understand the root causes.
Of hatred, prejudice, and discrimination.
And we need to develop strategies
for combating those forces.
Education is the foundation for action.
It helps us to recognize injustice,
to understand its complexities.
and to develop effective strategies for change.
And once we have that foundation,
then we can start to take action.
In our own communities.
We can speak out against injustice.
Support organizations that promote tolerance and understanding.
Work to create a more inclusive and equitable world.
It doesn't have to be grand gestures.
Even small acts of kindness, compassion, and understanding can make a difference.
It's about changing hearts and minds.
One person at a time.
Because ultimately, the fight against hatred and injustice
is a collective effort.
It requires each of us to step up, to speak out, and to act with compassion and courage.
And to never
forget
the lessons of the past?
Absolutely.
No.
Shifting back to Night specifically, let's talk about the role of silence.
It's a recurring motif.
It's a recurring motif throughout the book, and it holds a lot of symbolic weight.
The silence of the victims.
The silence of the world.
Or the silence of God.
It's a heavy presence.
Throughout the narrative.
The silence of the victims is often born out of fear.
Trauma.
Or the sheer inability to comprehend the horrors they are experiencing.
And that silence can be incredibly powerful.
It speaks volumes about the depths of their suffering.
The weight of their experience.
The silence of the world,
on the other hand,
is often born out of indifference, ignorance,
or a refusal to acknowledge the truth.
And that silence is deafening.
It's a complicit silence.
That allows evil to flourish.
Wiesel himself wrestled with the silence of God.
Throughout his life.
How could a just and loving God allow such suffering to exist?
It's a question that many survivors have grappled with.
And it's a question that Night forces us to confront as well.
Ultimately, the book doesn't offer easy answers.
But it does highlight the importance of breaking the silence.
Of speaking out against injustice.
Of remembering the victims.
Of fighting for a more just and compassionate world.
Because silence is a powerful weapon.
Both for those who seek to silence others.
And for those who refuse to speak up against injustice.
I mean, it's up to each of us to choose how we will use our voices.
Will we remain silent in the face of injustice?
Or will we use our voices to speak truth to power?
To demand change.
To honor the memory of the victims.
Night challenges us to make a choice.
And that choice has profound implications for ourselves, for our communities.
And for the world.
One of the things I find most fascinating about Night is the way it captures the gradual erosion of humanity in the camps.
It's not just a sudden shift.
It's a slow, insidious process.
You're right.
The prisoners are constantly dehumanized.
Stripped of their names.
Their possessions.
Their dignity.
They're reduced to numbers, to bodies.
To mere objects in the eyes of their captors.
And as their humanity is chipped away,
their behavior begins to change.
They become more self-centered.
More focused on survival at any cost.
We see this in the way they fight over food.
In the way they turn on each other.
Even in the way some abandon their loved ones.
In a desperate attempt to survive.
It's a heartbreaking reminder that even the strongest among us can be broken.
That even the most compassionate hearts can harden.
Under unbearable pressure.
It's a stark illustration of the dehumanizing effects
of violence and oppression.
And it's a warning about the fragility of our own humanity.
We have to be constantly vigilant against those forces
that seek to dehumanize us.
To reduce us to objects, to strip us of our dignity.
Because once we lose sight of our own humanity,
it becomes all too easy to inflict suffering on others.
And that's the danger that Night so powerfully illuminates.
Hello.
Let's talk about the relationship between Eliezer and his father for a bit.
Okay.
It's a central thread throughout the book.
And it undergoes a profound transformation.
It's a testament to the enduring power of love.
Even in the face of unimaginable suffering.
At the beginning of the story,
their relationship is fairly typical.
A son who respects his father.
A father who provides guidance and support.
But as they enter the camps, their roles begin to shift.
Okay.
The son becomes the protector, the caregiver.
Right.
He has to make difficult decisions about his father's well-being.
Wow.
Knowing that his choices could mean the difference between life and death.
It's a heavy burden to bear.
especially for a teenager.
But Eliezer rises to the challenge.
He shows remarkable strength
And resilience,
in caring for his father.
even as his own strength is waning.
And even as his faith is crumbling,
Their bond becomes a source of hope
and motivation.
for both of them.
And ultimately,
Yeah.
even though Eliezer's father dies towards the end of the book, their love for each other transcends death.
Wow.
It's a reminder that even the most horrific experiences cannot extinguish the power of human connection.
And that those connections,
Can provide us with the strength to endure.
even the darkest of nights,
The relationship between Eliezer and his father is just one example.
of the many complex and profound relationships.
But they're explored in Night.
There are moments of kindness
And compassion.
between prisoners, acts of selflessness and sacrifice.
That offer glimpses of hope amidst the darkness.
And there are also instances of betrayal
Of prisoners turning on each other.
in a desperate attempt to survive.
It's a testament to the complexity of human nature.
The capacity for both great good,
And great evil.
and it's a reminder that even in the most extreme circumstances,
We have a choice to make.
to succumb to the darkness,
Or to strive for the light.
to choose compassion over cruelty, empathy over indifference,
And hope over despair.
and those choices
those acts of resistance.
are what ultimately define our humanity.
They're what allow us to find meaning and purpose.
Even in the midst of suffering,
Yeah.
as we delve deeper into Night,
Right.
I want to touch upon a few specific passages that really resonated with me.
Okay.
One that stands out is when Eliezer talks about feeling
Whoa.
revolt rise up within him.
It's the moment when he begins to question God's silence, to grapple with the seeming absence of justice.
In the face of such profound suffering.
Why should I bless his name? He asks.
Yeah.
The eternal Lord of the universe, the all-powerful and terrible, was silent. What had I to thank him for?
It's a raw, visceral expression of anguish,
And disillusionment
and it speaks to the crisis of faith.
that many survivors experience.
It forces us to confront the age-old question.
How can a good and loving God allow such evil to exist in the world?
And while Night doesn't offer definitive answers,
It does provide a space for those questions to be asked.
for those doubts to be explored,
Because sometimes
Yeah.
the most honest and courageous response to suffering is to question,
to doubt.
to wrestle with our beliefs.
And that struggle
That wrestling with faith
can ultimately lead to a deeper understanding.
of ourselves and the world around us.
Another passage that really struck me is when Eliezer described the dehumanizing process of arriving at Auschwitz.
Oh, yes.
He writes,
We were no longer allowed to keep our belongings.
right.
They were thrown into a pile. A truck drew up to the heap, and in a few moments, all our possessions were gone.
It's a stark depiction of how quickly the Nazis stripped the prisoners.
Of their identities, their sense of self.
It's not just about losing material possessions.
It's about losing the things that make us human.
Our memories, our connections to the past.
Our sense of individuality.
It's a deliberate tactic
Designed to break the prisoners' spirits.
to make them more compliant.
More susceptible to manipulation and control.
And it's a reminder that dehumanization is often the first step.
Towards violence and oppression.
When we strip people of their humanity,
When we reduce them to objects or statistics.
it becomes all too easy to inflict suffering on them.
And that's the danger that Night so powerfully warns us against.
It's a call to recognize the humanity in everyone,
Regardless of their background.
their beliefs or their circumstances.
Because when we see each other as human beings,
Deserving of dignity and respect,
it becomes much harder to tolerate injustice and oppression.
and much easier to act with compassion, empathy, and courage.
Okay.
Let's talk about another passage.
Mm-hmm.
This one is truly chilling.
Okay.
Eliezer describes seeing babies being thrown into a burning ditch.
It's one of the most horrific and unforgettable scenes in the book.
It speaks to the depths of Nazi cruelty.
The utter disregard for human life.
Eliezer writes.
Not far from us, flames were leaping up from a ditch. Gigantic flames.
Right.
They were burning something. A lorry drew up at the pit and delivered its load little children. Babies.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw it with my own eyes. Those children in the flames.
It's hard to even fathom such evil.
It is.
And then Eliezer is asked a question that continues to haunt readers.
How could it be possible for them to burn people, children, and for the world to keep silent?
It's a question that forces us to confront the role of silence and indifference.
In the face of evil,
It's a question that challenges us to examine our own responsibility.
To speak out against injustice.
Because silence, as we've discussed,
Can be just as deadly as violence itself.
it enables the perpetrators and allows suffering to continue unchecked.
It's a stark reminder that we must never remain silent in the face of evil.
We have a moral obligation to speak out, to bear witness, to fight for justice.
Even when it's difficult.
Even when it's dangerous.
Because,
In the words of Elie Wiesel,
we must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented.
And as we continue to explore Night, I want to encourage you to pay close attention to the moments when characters choose to break the silence.
To the acts of resistance.
To the acts of resistance, both big and small.
That affirm their humanity and challenge the forces of darkness.
Because it's in those moments.
That we see the true power of the human spirit.
The capacity to endure, to hope.
And to fight for a better world, even in the face of unimaginable suffering.
And those are the lessons that we can carry with us long after we've finished reading Night.
They're the lessons that can inspire us to be more compassionate.
More courageous and more committed.
To creating a world where such atrocities can never happen again.
Yeah.
I'd like to shift gears a bit and talk about the recurring motif of night in the book.
Okay.
It's more than just a literal darkness.
Yeah.
It represents a loss of faith.
A descent into despair.
It's a powerful metaphor for the darkness that consumed Europe during the Holocaust.
The night symbolizes the absence of hope.
The silencing of God.
The engulfing fear.
That permeated the lives of the victims.
It represents a world turned upside down.
Where traditional values are shattered and basic human rights are violated with impunity.
And yet, even within this darkness,
there are flickers of light.
Moments of human connection, acts of kindness and compassion.
Whispers of hope that refuse to be extinguished.
The night is a powerful symbol throughout Night.
It is.
And it's worth paying close attention to how it's used.
To represent both the depths of suffering
and the enduring strength of the human spirit.
Yeah.
Let's talk about those flickers of light for a bit.
Okay.
Amidst the darkness of the Holocaust.
There are moments of incredible humanity.
And resilience.
What are some of the examples that stand out to you?
One that immediately comes to mind is the scene where Eliezer meets a young French woman.
While working in a warehouse.
She sees that he's been beaten.
And risks her own safety.
To offer him food and comfort.
It's a beautiful moment of compassion and empathy.
Yeah.
A reminder that even in the darkest of places, human kindness can still shine through.
And it's especially poignant because it's a woman.
Who steps up to help Eliezer.
A young boy who is suffering immensely.
It challenges traditional gender roles.
And highlights the strength and resilience of women in the face of adversity.
I also think about the scene where Julik, a young violinist,
plays his instrument in the barracks.
Moments before his death.
That scene is so heartbreaking.
Yet so beautiful.
Yeah.
It speaks to the power of art to transcend even the most horrific circumstances.
Even in the face of death.
Julik finds solace and meaning in his music.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit.
And it's a reminder that beauty and hope can exist.
Even in the darkest of nights.
Another example that resonates with me
is
the bond between Eliezer and his father.
Their love for each other helps them to endure unimaginable hardships.
It's a powerful illustration of the importance of human connection.
Of finding strength in the love and support of others.
And even though Eliezer's father ultimately dies,
their bond transcends death.
The love and memories they shared continue to sustain Eliezer.
Even after he's liberated.
It's a reminder that the bonds of love and family
are some of the most powerful forces in the human experience.
They can help us to endure even the darkest of nights, and they can provide us with strength and solace long after those nights have passed.
Like moments of light.
Those acts of resistance and resilience
are what make Night so much more than just a story about suffering.
They offer a glimmer of hope.
A testament to the enduring power of the human spirit.
And they remind us that even in the face of unimaginable evil,
we have the capacity to choose love over hate.
Compassion over cruelty.
And hope over despair.
And those choices,
as we've discussed,
have profound implications for ourselves, for our communities, and for the world.
Yeah.
As we continue to explore Night, I want to encourage you to think about how you can apply the lessons of this book to your own life.
How can you be more compassionate?
More empathetic? More courageous in the face of adversity.
How can you use your voice to speak out against injustice?
And to advocate for a more just and compassionate world.
What small acts of kindness can you perform today?
That will make a difference in your community.
Night is a powerful call to action.
It challenges us to remember the past, to learn from it.
And to work towards a better future.
Because
The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. And indifference is the enemy of humanity.
so let's choose love.
Let's choose compassion.
Let's choose hope.
And let's never, ever forget the lessons of night.
Now,
Let's shift our focus to some of the key symbols in the book.
okay.
One that really stands out is the imagery of fire.
Yes.
Fire is a powerful symbol throughout night.
It represents both destruction and purification.
Horror and hope.
On one hand, fire is associated with the crematoria
The horrific instruments of death.
that consumed the lives of millions,
The flames represent the Nazis' attempt to obliterate the Jews.
to erase their existence from the face of the earth.
But fire also holds a deeper, more symbolic meaning.
It can represent the burning away of illusions.
The purification of the soul through suffering.
And in some interpretations, fire symbolizes the enduring spirit of the Jewish people, their ability to rise from the ashes of destruction.
It's a complex symbol.
That underscores the duality of the human experience.
The capacity for both great evil and great resilience.
And it's worth paying close attention.
To how Wiesel uses fire imagery throughout the book to convey different layers of meaning.
Another symbol that comes to mind.
The Star of David
Right.
in Night. The Star of David is transformed from a symbol of Jewish pride and identity into a mark of shame and persecution.
The Nazis forced Jews to wear the yellow star,
As a way to identify and isolate them.
to make them visible targets for hatred and violence,
It's a stark illustration of how symbols can be manipulated.
and twisted to serve the purposes of oppression.
And it's a reminder
That even the most cherished symbols.
can be corrupted and used to inflict pain and suffering.
The Star of David is a powerful symbol in night,
It represents the way the Nazis sought to strip Jews of their dignity.
their identity, and their sense of belonging,
It's a reminder that persecution often begins with the dehumanization of the other.
with the creation of arbitrary distinctions and divisions between people,
And it's a call to challenge those distinctions.
to affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every human being.
Regardless of their background or beliefs.
Because in the end,
We are all more alike than we are different.
and we have a shared responsibility.
To create a world where no one is persecuted or discriminated against.
Because of their identity.
Another symbol that comes to mind is food.
It takes on a whole new meaning in the context of the camps.
Absolutely.
Food becomes an obsession,
A symbol of survival.
a source of both conflict and connection.
The prisoners are constantly hungry,
Their bodies and minds.
consumed by the need for sustenance.
Even a small crust of bread or a watery bowl of soup,
Becomes a precious commodity, something to be fought over.
hoarded and traded.
We see the dehumanizing effects of starvation.
The way it reduces people to their most basic instincts
And yet,
amidst this desperation.
we also see acts of sharing.
Of prisoners risking their own survival to help someone else.
It's a testament to the enduring power of compassion.
Even in the most dire of circumstances.
Food is a powerful symbol in night.
It underscores the prisoners' constant struggle for survival.
Their desperation for even the most basic necessities.
But it also highlights the resilience of the human spirit,
The capacity for kindness and connection.
even in the face of unimaginable suffering.
And it reminds us that even in the darkest of times,
There are glimmers of light.
moments of humanity that shine through the darkness.
So as we continue our exploration of night,
I want to encourage you to pay attention to the language that Wiesel uses.
it's incredibly powerful, poetic, and evocative.
Absolutely.
Wiesel's writing is both spare and lyrical.
He doesn't shy away from the horrors he witnessed.
But he also finds beauty and meaning.
In the midst of suffering,
He uses vivid imagery
metaphor,
and symbolism to convey the depths of his experience
and he often employs short, fragmented sentences.
that reflect the fragmented nature of his memories.
The trauma he endured.
His writing is a testament to the power of language to bear witness,
To convey the unspeakable.
to connect us to the human experience in all its complexity.
And as you read Night,
I encourage you to pay attention to the nuances of his language,
to the ways in which he uses words to paint pictures,
to evoke emotions,
and to challenge your thinking.
because it's through his words that we can begin to understand the depths of his experience
The horrors he witnessed.
and the resilience of the human spirit.
Now,
Shifting gears a bit.
let's talk about the historical context of Night.
Okay, it's important to understand the events that led up to the Holocaust.
the political and social forces that made it possible.
We've already touched upon the rise of Nazi ideology.
But it's worth delving a bit deeper into the specific events.
That paved the way for the genocide of European Jews.
The Holocaust didn't happen overnight.
It was the culmination of centuries of anti-Semitism.
Coupled with the specific political and economic conditions of post-World War I Germany,
The Treaty of Versailles
which ended World War I,
imposed harsh penalties on Germany.
leading to widespread economic hardship and social unrest,
And the Nazi Party
led by Adolf Hitler,
exploited this unrest
scapegoating Jews and other minority groups.
for Germany's problems.
They used propaganda and intimidation to spread their hateful ideology.
Blaming Jews for everything from economic woes
To moral decline,
and gradually
they stripped Jews of their rights, their property,
and their dignity.
paving the way for the horrors that were to come.
It's a chilling reminder that genocide doesn't happen in a vacuum.
It's often the result of a gradual erosion of human rights.
A step-by-step process of dehumanization and scapegoating
And it's a warning to be vigilant,
against those forces that seek to divide us
to promote hatred and intolerance.
and to undermine the basic principles of human dignity and equality.
Because the lessons of the Holocaust are not confined to the past.
They are relevant to our world today,
In every country,
in every community,
we must be constantly vigilant.
against the forces of darkness,
And we must never forget the victims.
of hatred and intolerance.
Oh,
Let's talk about the concept of collective responsibility for a moment.
okay.
It's a theme that runs throughout Night.
And it raises some difficult ethical questions.
The Nazis often held entire communities responsible.
For the actions of individuals,
If one person disobeyed,
the entire group would suffer the consequences.
this created a climate of fear and mistrust.
And it made it incredibly difficult for people to resist.
Because speaking out or acting against the Nazis,
Could result in the deaths of your friends, your family.
the entire community,
It's a moral dilemma that many faced.
during the Holocaust.
And it forces us to ask ourselves,
What would we do in such a situation?
would we risk our own lives to protect others?
Would we speak out against injustice?
Even if it meant putting ourselves and our loved ones in danger.
These are tough questions,
And there are no easy answers.
but Night compels us
To grapple with those questions.
to examine our own values and beliefs
And to think about how we would respond.
in such extreme circumstances.
Because ultimately,
It's up to each of us to decide what we stand for
what we're willing to fight for.
and what we're willing to sacrifice.
For the sake of justice and humanity, I want to shift our focus to something that's central to Night,
Which is
the power of memory.
Elie Wiesel dedicated his life.
To ensuring that the world never forgot the horrors of the Holocaust,
He understood that memory wasn't just about recounting the past,
but about bearing witness.
about keeping the victims alive.
In our hearts and minds.
He famously said,
To forget the dead would be akin to killing them a second time.
and Night serves as a powerful testament to that idea.
It's a call to remember
To honor the victims,
and to use our understanding of the past.
to create a better future.
Memory is not just about the past.
It's about the present and the future,
It's about using our knowledge of history to guide our actions in the present,
and to build a world.
where such atrocities can never happen again.
So, as we continue our exploration of Night
I want to encourage you to think about the role of memory.
in your own life,
What stories do you carry with you?
what lessons have you learned from the past?
And how can you use those lessons to make a positive difference in the world?
Because
As Elie Wiesel also said,
there may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice, but there must never be a time when we fail to protest.
and memory is the fuel for protest.
It's what keeps us vigilant,
What motivates us to fight for justice
what reminds us of what's at stake.
in the struggle for a better world. Let's honor the victims of the past by remembering their stories
By learning from their experiences,
and by using our voices to speak out against injustice.
wherever and whenever we see it. One of the things that Night explores so powerfully,
Is the breakdown of faith?
Eliezer, a devout young man at the start of the story,
Grapples with the existence of God.
in the face of unimaginable suffering.
It's a question that has haunted humanity for centuries.
If God is good and all-powerful,
Why does evil exist? Why do innocent people suffer?
and Night doesn't shy away from those difficult questions.
It doesn't offer easy answers or platitudes.
Instead, it presents Eliezer's raw,
Honest struggle.
with his faith as he witnesses the horrors of the Holocaust.
We see his anger
His doubt, his despair,
as he questions the silence of God.
the seeming abandonment of his people.
At one point, he even declared,
God is hanging here on this gallows.
a powerful and heartbreaking image of his shattered faith.
It's a stark reminder.
That even the most devout among us can have their faith shaken to the core.
When confronted with the depths of human cruelty and suffering.
And I think it speaks to Wiesel's honesty as a writer.
That he doesn't shy away from these difficult questions.
These moments of doubt and despair.
Because faith is not always about certainty or blind acceptance.
It's often about wrestling with difficult questions.
Grappling with the unknown.
And searching for meaning and purpose even in the midst of darkness.
And that's the journey that Night takes us on.
A journey of faith, tested, challenged, and ultimately transformed.
It's a journey that many survivors have walked.
And it's one that continues to resonate with readers today.
Because the questions that Elie Wiesel raises are universal.
There are questions about the nature of good and evil.
The meaning of suffering.
And the search for hope in a world that often seems devoid of it.
And while Night doesn't offer easy answers,
it does invite us to engage with those questions.
To wrestle with our own beliefs.
And to find our own path through the darkness.
Because ultimately,
faith is a personal journey.
It's about finding what sustains us.
What gives us strength.
What helps us to make sense of the world around us.
And sometimes
that journey takes us through the darkest of nights.
But even in those darkest of nights,
there are flickers of light.
Moments of grace.
Whispers of hope that can guide us towards a new dawn.
You know,
it's interesting to consider the idea of motivation in the context of Night.
What can we learn from Elie's story?
About resilience, about the will to live.
Night is a testament to the extraordinary strength of the human spirit.
The capacity to endure even the most horrific suffering.
Elie faces unimaginable challenges.
Starvation, disease, brutality.
The loss of his family and his faith.
And yet he finds the strength to keep going.
What motivates him?
What keeps him going?
When all hope seems lost.
I think it's a combination of factors.
In the early days.
It's the love for his father that drives him.
The need to protect and care for him.
That bond becomes a lifeline for both of them.
Later, as his faith wavers.
It's a more primal instinct for survival.
That kicks in.
The need to find food.
To avoid punishment.
To simply stay alive.
And there are moments when he seems to find strength.
In the very act of resistance.
Of refusing to let the Nazis completely break his spirit.
Even in the darkest of moments.
He clings to tiny glimmers of hope.
A kind word from a fellow prisoner.
A shared crust of bread.
A moment of beauty amidst the ugliness.
And ultimately,
I think it's the will to bear witness.
To survive so that he can tell his story.
That becomes his greatest motivation.
He wants the world to know what happened.
To remember the victims.
To learn from the horrors of the Holocaust.
And that desire.
That commitment to memory.
Becomes his driving force.
It's what helps him to endure the unimaginable.
And to emerge from the darkness, forever changed, but still standing.
Elie's story is a powerful reminder
that even in the face of unimaginable adversity,
we can find the strength to survive,
to resist,
and to find meaning and purpose in our lives.
It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit,
the enduring power of hope,
and the importance of finding something to hold on to, something to fight for,
even when all seems lost.
And that is the ultimate lesson of Night.
A lesson that can inspire us all to be more compassionate,
more courageous, and more committed to creating a world
where such atrocities can never happen again. It's a powerful image.
So powerful. And, as we've been talking about these horrors and the strength Elie's are found, it makes me think about the ending of Night.
When he sees his reflection after liberation.
Right, and barely recognizing himself.
Yeah, the physical toll is clear.
But it's more than that.
It's like his soul has been marked by what he endured.
He writes, "From the depths of the mirror, a corpse gazed back at me. The look in his eyes, as they stared into mine, has never left me."
It's haunting. It really makes you think about how trauma runs deep.
It shapes not just our memories, but who we are.
And for survivors, how do you rebuild your life after that?
It's a testament to the human spirit that so many did rebuild.
Finding love, family, contributing to the world.
But that doesn't erase the pain, the loss, the feeling that something's broken.
Absolutely. Night reminds us that the wounds of the past can stay with us.
And it makes empathy so important.
For those who've been through such trauma, their stories need to be heard.
Their pain acknowledged, their resilience honored.
It's like what we keep coming back to.
The power of this book.
As a testament to the human spirit.
Despite the darkness, the despair, there's hope in Night.
Moments that offer a sense of possibility.
Of resilience, of good in the world.
Like when Eliezer meets that French woman.
In the warehouse.
Unexpected kindness.
But there's another scene. I keep thinking about Juliet playing his violin.
Right before he dies.
To hold on to music, beauty, when surrounded by death.
It says so much about our need for meaning.
For connection.
For something more than just the terrible things happening.
It's like even when all hope seems lost.
There's still beauty, art, things that remind us we're human.
And that's what makes Night more than just suffering.
It's those glimmers of strength.
Hope, compassion, even facing evil.
Those are the lessons I hope people take away.
To inspire us to be better.
More compassionate, more courageous.
To fight for a world where this doesn't happen again.
Because, as Wiesel said, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference.
And being indifferent is a choice we make.
To turn away, to ignore, to stay silent.
So let's choose the opposite.
Love, compassion, remembering.
Learning, using our voices for good.
If you're feeling inspired, pick up Night. Read it firsthand.
And if you've already read it, hopefully this deep dive gave you something new to think about.
Thank you for joining us on Motivation Library.
Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to support us in bringing you more deep dives.
Until next time, keep reading, keep learning.
And keep striving to make a positive difference out there in the world.